Verschlossen. Ist immer noch alles zu. Hä? Aber was soll ich dann jetzt machen? Konnte ich mir nicht irgendwie Hinweise geben lassen?
Let's look for Renee's room in the slightly agitated ward.
Ja, let's look for Renee's room. Da waren wir doch gerade, oder nicht? Ist das einzige Zimmer, das offen ist? Oder bin ich blöd? Ich muss bestimmt... Es ist laut. Wenn es laut war, wurden die Türen zugemacht und das Licht aus. Türen zu. Ich mache mal auch die Fenster zu, weil auch die wurden ja zugemacht. Deswegen kommen wir hier auch an die Fenster ran. Und Licht aus.
They put a straight jacket on you.
Sie haben uns also eine Zwangsjacke angezogen.
They gave you a cold shower.
Ja, sowas hilft natürlich immer. Das wissen wir ja alle.
They suffocated you with a sheet.
Wasserfolter nennt man sowas.
They tied me to the bed. A woman died next to me, choked by her own vomit. She was tied down because she wouldn't stop pleasuring herself. I can still hear her death rattle. I screamed, but nobody came. Everybody screamed in there, all of them. It was then I saw the doll, which wasn't Charlotte. No, she wasn't Charlotte.
Wo denn? Dort?
The past was like the present. That doll, that man, the shame. Renee was increasingly divorced from reality. How will I ever find out what really happened? How will I ever find Amara again if I can't even find myself?
Oh, die Tür ist zu. Ach, da liegt ein Zettel für uns. Meine Befürchtung ist ja, dass Amara vielleicht schon gar nicht mehr ist, denn ich vermute mal, sie war etwas älter als wir.
Montefoscoli, November 12th, 1939. My dear daughter, it is with great sadness that I heard what happened. Your transfer and your sufferings are a cause of great worry for me. It will take time, but you'll see, things will improve. They'll treat you and you'll get better again. I pray a lot, every day. Write to me often and tell me if you need anything. I promise I'll do what I can. Try to be strong. Mom.
Mama hat uns also Briefe
This is the
geschrieben.
last letter she wrote to me. Once I was put into this ward, I was overwhelmed by loneliness. After that medical examination, I received no more letters from Mom. Why is that man here? Why doesn't she come to see me? Did I make a mistake? It didn't seem like she wanted to abandon me. What did I do wrong? I'd like to be able to reply to her again now, to change things. Sie tun mir immer so weh. Ich bin so allein. Keiner weiß mehr etwas von mir. Es ist, als ob ich nicht mehr da wäre. Sie haben mir alles weggenommen. Alles. Ich bitte dich, hol mich hier weg von diesem Ort. Er macht mir solche Angst.
auch meine Freundin. Hilf mir, tu was. Meine Angst ist so groß. Verstehen tue ich kaum was. Alles ist durcheinander. So kann ich nicht mehr leben ohne einen Sinn. Ich kann auch nicht mal mehr weinen. Du hattest recht. Ich weiß, ich verstehe, mein Verhalten war falsch. Wenn du wüsstest, wie sehr ich mich schäme. Wir haben ja nichts falsch gemacht und wir haben ja davor schon von Angst gesprochen. Ne? Also sprechen wir ruhig weiter von unserer Angst, würde ich sagen. Aber jetzt weiß ich mich zu benehmen, ganz bestimmt. Jetzt wird alles gut. Ich werde arbeiten und anständig sein. Sie hassen mich, er hasst mich, er will mich umbringen, aber keiner versteht das, keiner glaubt mir. Ich glaube übrigens, der Mann, um mal ganz kurz hier von dem Brief wegzukommen, der Mann wollte uns vielleicht sagen, dass unsere Mutter verstorben ist, denn sie war ja krank. Das haben wir ja von dem einen Brief erfahren. Und wenn nach dem einen Brief, der uns noch erreicht hat, nichts mehr weiter kam von ihr, dann ist sie vielleicht verstorben nach diesem Brief. Ich würde am liebsten sterben. Abends hoffe ich nicht mehr aufwachen zu müssen. Ich kann nicht beschreiben, was mir passiert. Manchmal weiß ich nicht mehr, wo ich bin. Ja.
Perhaps she would have listened to me. Will she reply?
Spiel? Danke. Wird sie mir antworten. Wo bringe ich den Brief denn jetzt hin? Zum Doktor hier? Nein, irgendwo muss ja eine Postabteilung sein, oder? Die ist wahrscheinlich nicht hier. Aber jetzt sind alle Türen offen und wir können uns alles angucken. Klinisches Tagebuch über René T. Symptome und Behandlung. Eine oder mehrere der folgenden anomalen Verhaltensweisen angeben. Geschwätzig. Warte mal, was ist denn hier so unterstrichen? Das zweite, also Nymphoman. Ich glaube eher nicht. Labil. Impulsiv. Laut. Halluzinierend. Exhibitionistisch, aber ich denke, wir wollten uns nicht ausziehen eigentlich. Das stand doch in der Krankenakte, dass wir uns dagegen gewehrt haben. Und wütend. In der Krankenakte stand doch eigentlich, dass wir uns dagegen gewehrt haben, oder nicht? Was ist das denn? Ich will es gar nicht wissen. Okay, wir brauchen irgendeine Postabteilung. Irgendwo muss es einen Raum geben, in dem Post abgegeben wird. Ein wunderschöner leerer Raum. Was haben wir hier? Aufgezeichnete Besuche von René T. Datum, Zeit, Personendaten. 10. April 1938. Adele T. und Bruna M. Hatten wir eine Schwester? Ja doch, wir hatten eine Schwester, ne? Glaube ich. 15. Juni 1938 um 9:15 Uhr. Polizist wegen Befragung. 25. Juni 1938 um 15:30 Uhr. Bruna M. 20. April 1940. Onofrio P. Ah, oder sind das unsere Eltern? Oder unsere Mutter und wer auch immer Bruna M. ist? Und wer ist Onofrio P.? 13. Juni 1940. Unerlaubte Besuche. Okay, was denn für unerlaubte Besuche? Ich meine, es kommt doch eigentlich niemand rein, ohne dass es einer mitkriegt, oder? Also eigentlich. Uneigentlich weiß ich das natürlich nicht. Was haben wir hier für einen schönen Raum? Wieder ein Mehrbettzimmer. Aber hier gibt es nichts für uns, oder? Nein. Geh mal ganz auf. Was bist du für ein Raum? Ein Raum, in dem es nichts für uns gibt. Hier haben wir ein Zweibettzimmer. Oh, hier wurden wohl Patienten fest... Hier war das wohl, wo die Patienten festgeschnallt wurden. Mit Loch in der Matratze. Damit die Notdurft nicht auf der Matratze landet. Ist ja richtig herrlich. Oh, wieder ein Mehrbettzimmer. Ah, geil. Die eine war sogar ans Fenster gekettet. Ist ja... Das ist ja richtig, richtig herzallerliebst. Ich meine, mir ist klar, dass das hier alles ein bisschen überdramatisiert vielleicht auch dargestellt wurde. Aber Fakt ist, wir wissen wahrscheinlich zum Teil wirklich überhaupt nicht, was damals so in den Irrenanstalten abging. Und es würde mich nicht wundern, wenn man nicht sogar gerade die Damenwelt dann an Fenster gekettet hat im Zweifelsfall. Frauen wurden ja gerne mal schnell als verrückt abgestempelt. Früher. Werden sie von manchen auch heute noch als verrückt oder hysterisch. Was für viele keinen Unterschied macht. Gruselig wäre es, wenn man sich hier so ein bisschen umdreht, einfach nur unauffällig und dann da drüben so jemanden im Fenster stehen sieht, der gar nicht da ist. Was aber hoffe, denke, glaube ich, hier nicht passieren wird. Oh, wir kommen jetzt da drüben hin. Waren wir da drüben schon? Was ist da drüben für eine Abteilung? Auf jeden Fall Verwahrung der persönlichen Habe. Abteilung Bettlägerige Geisteskranke. Okay. Da ist dann bestimmt auch die Postabteilung, nehme ich mal an. Charlotte? Charlotte ist noch da. Und wir gehen in jedes Zimmerlein. Diese Ambient-Sounds ständig, ne? Oh, was haben wir hier Schönes? Augenarzt. Ja, Augenarzt. Nichts Interessantes für uns im Regal. Ich hoffe, das sind Christbaumkugeln. Glasaugen, nehme ich mal an. Was ist das? Wahrscheinlich eine Lupe, mit der man ins Auge geguckt hat. Da liegt noch eine Brille, die können wir uns angucken. Harry Potter war auch hier. Entschuldigung. Jetzt konnte ich nicht mehr zurückhalten. Die ist leer, an die komme ich nicht ran. Weil ich zu fett bin. Kann ich hier irgendwas angucken? Naja, außer so jetzt, sondern irgendwas, was vielleicht wieder was triggert. Ein schönes Bild aus der Vergangenheit. Nein. Noch mehr Augenposter. Richtig schöne Augenposter. Die würde ich mir glatt zu Hause hinhängen. Okay, da lang müssen wir weiter. Und wieder ein Mehrbettzimmer. Richtig schön hier alles. Mensch, da möchte man doch selber sofort hin. Ist ja noch ein viel schöneres Mehrbettzimmer. Aber wir suchen die Postabteilung. Was ist hier? Türen, die nicht aufgehen. Abgeschlossen. Schade. Okay, das ist wahrscheinlich auch wieder nur so eine Art Lagerraum. Ich dachte, das wäre vielleicht wieder ein Flur zu den Duschen, aber vielleicht haben die hier gar keine Duschen, weil man sowas hier nicht brauchte. Okay, der Rollstuhl ist leer. Hier auch wieder so ein Bett, an das man gefesselt wurde, wenn dann. Ja, ich mache jetzt nicht mehr alle Fenster auf. Der hat das vom letzten Mal eh nicht gespeichert. Oh, wieder ganz viele Tinkturen. The Complete Works of René T. Errungenschaft. So, und jetzt können wir dann mal ins Tagebuch gucken. Ich hätte das Trinken auf dann verschieben sollen. So, mal kurz Erinnerung. Hier haben wir das, wie wir weggebracht werden. Und die Zwangsjacke. Erlebnisse, Tagebuch. So. The Town of Light.
My name is Renee. They told me that I have to write this diary, but I don't feel like it. It's not true that I feel better when I write. Actually, it's worse. I was a shy girl, and I just wanted to be like the others. But that's not what happened. No. I did things that, when I think about them now, eventually brought me here. Everything started with that damned light. It happened for the first time when I was still a little girl. I was 6 or 7. I was walking outside school when suddenly the noise started to melt into an indistinct rumble. The light increased out of all proportion and everything lost its meaning. I could no longer recognize anything. Objects, people, words, not even myself. I felt fear as a physical sensation. It prevented me from moving, from swallowing, from breathing. After God knows how long, everything went back to normal. But a new fear replaced the old one. Different, but terrible. Of the light coming back. And it did come back. My memory of those years is hazy. Between the age of about 7 and 10, my memories are disconnected, and I couldn't say how many times and how frequently the light used to come. My mother gave me a doll around that time. Charlotte. Thinking back to it makes me want to laugh. But at the beginning, I remembered that I was afraid of her. I thought she wanted to harm me, to kill me and take my place. But when the light came, she would stay beside me, and her presence did not disturb me. I was able to talk to her, and so she became my best friend. At least until I was in grade 2, when everything changed. She didn't laugh at me, and if I had to say something to my mother, I asked her to say it. When things inside me turned bad, she was the only one I could turn to. Now all of this makes me blush, but Charlotte was a real friend to me. I knew that she was just a doll. I wasn't stupid, but at the same time, she was real too. I don't know how to explain it. It's difficult. My mother would cuddle her and tell her things. I guess she was trying to communicate with me. But back then, I was too afraid to understand it. I didn't tell anyone about the light. I knew that something terrible was happening to me. I thought that I would die, and the shame I felt was so deep that an uncontrollable restlessness took over me. I was afraid when other people were nearby. I saw fingers pointed at me, mouths laughing, condemning me. I tried to be alone. I would sit down on the ground and, curled up in the dark, I would repeat a word, any word, in continuation. This helped me not to think, not to lose myself. I would spend entire days like this, hoping that my mother would ignore me. Her compassionate words hurt me and terrorized me even more, and so I had to. Shout and shout and shout those words. After a few days, things got better, and little by little I came out of my hiding place. But the fear was always there, under the surface, ready to strike me even harder. I remember a recurring dream from that time. I used to have plenty of nightmares, but this particular one was so real that even today, I ask myself whether it could have possibly been just a dream. I was in bed, enveloped by the warmth of the blanket, in the dark, about to succumb to sleep, when I heard the bedroom door open. I turned to face the wall and did not have the courage to turn around. I only saw a shadow cast against the wall by the light filtering in through the door. Then I heard the door close again, and I thought that it might have been my mother who, before going to bed, used to peep in to see whether I was sleeping. However, there was no time to breathe a sigh of relief, for footsteps approached the bed, and I heard the sound of breathing close by. Fear paralyzed me from head to toe. The blankets were pulled back. I remember the chill of fresh air on my spine. Someone sat on the bed, and I trembled. Then the dream finished. The light often came when I was at school, turning my fellow pupils into puppets that would terrorize me. To me they appeared transformed, with the bloodied heads of animals stuck where their own heads should have been. I would curl up on the floor and would even wet myself. The teacher would try to console me and would smile at me, but her teeth and her eyes would terrify me even more. Things did change. I don't know why, perhaps during the 2nd or 3rd year of school. It was more or less in the same period that I became friends with Bruna. I remember the sensation of joy I experienced when I felt almost normal. The light isn't coming. The dreams have gone, and I have a real friend, one who speaks to me. I would repeat this to myself proudly while looking in the mirror, where I no longer saw an embarrassing reflection. It seemed to me that the world was a difficult place, but it was no longer impossible. Bruna. I did not understand what Bruna saw in me, especially as she was almost 2 years older than me. I would tell her this every now and then, and she would joke about it, saying, "Nothing. I don't see anything in you, which is what I like about you." And then she would hug me. But one day, she was sad and pensive, and said to me, "You and I are the same. Don't be fooled. You are reserved and honest, and I'm not. But that's the only difference between us. The only one." Then she began to cry. I was struck by the perception in her words, but only today, after re-examining my past, do I understand what she meant. I no longer considered my body as something disgusting and ill. Far from it. I began to look at myself, to caress myself, and smell my own skin. I began to explore and experiment, finding physical pleasure. My ideas were not very clear, and I never spoke to anyone about these things. Bruna, however, spoke about them. She boasted about her love stories and her young men. To my eyes, she was very lucky, always being wooed. by marvelous, generous, and kind boys. Thus, I fantasized about her adventures, pretending that I was the main protagonist. But how could I ever be like her? Occasionally I recall that she had black and blue marks on her body, but I was so naive that I did not understand. I did not put two and two together. It was Don Gino who explained things to me a few years later. He told me about Bruna's father and brother, but I was already very ill. The light had returned, and that thing made me suffer even more. It was my world, and it was crumbling. When I spoke to Bruna about it, she turned her head away and was silent for a long time. Prince Charming doesn't exist, Renee. At least not for us. I was 14 years old. I didn't think it was possible for a boy to look at me and desire me. When he asked me if I wanted to go for a walk, I didn't say anything. I didn't even have the courage to look at him. Things improved for a number of years, then suddenly everything came crashing down. One evening I came home drunk, and the following morning a terrible crisis overcame me all of a sudden. What had I done? I was terrified. I thought I'd lost my sight. The light burned my eyes from inside. The memories of the previous day emerged in bursts, images, flashes, which unleashed something monstrous inside me. Repetition of words was no longer sufficient. Now there was a voice in my head which repeated them louder than I did, and they were words of accusation and blame. So I covered my ears and shouted and hit my head against the wall and threw up. I remember the doctor, the wall filthy with blood and vomit. My mother wasn't looking at me. Bruna was crying but trying to hide it. Charlotte was beside me. I never told anyone what had happened. He came to visit me, but I refused to see him. I became agitated. I think he liked me, even though things turned out badly. In that period, I began to suffer from memory loss. The few things I learned didn't please me at all. He told me that I was looking for him. It was all my fault. Bruna told me that sometimes I got drunk. People in the village gossiped about me. Sometimes I was covered in black and blue marks. I didn't realize what was happening to me, what I was doing. I was no longer in control of my life. From my little corner. He felt accused, hurt. I chased him away. I insulted him. He was proud, handsome. He said things about me to other people, which he shouldn't have said. Mother caught me coming home drunk. She beat me and sent me to speak to Don Gino every day. He came back and tried to speak to me. I think he liked me. Sometimes I sent him packing and I started shouting at him, but other times I embraced him. I held him tight and loved him. But he couldn't bind himself to me. I was 16 and ill. I had no future. I didn't get out of bed for weeks. Then I did things I was ashamed of. I slept with men. The guilt tore at my soul, and the light came back to torture me. I invented stories to justify my actions. I couldn't bear my own weight. Mom found out about it. Her voice split my head. I pushed her away because I was afraid of dying, and I shouted to the whole world what was happening to me. and that I didn't understand. The police arrived and they carted me away. I remember the onlookers shaking their heads. They would be better off without me, cleansed of shame, with something to talk about for a while.
Okay. Bruna, wahrscheinlich dann Bruna M. von den Zetteln mit den Besuchen ist also unsere Freundin.